Let's see, I gotta get that continue button thing.
Okay.
Boink. Okay.
So this is a draft. This is what we would be sending forward to our prosecuting attorney to review. We would be in section 3.10 of Article 3, other elected officials. This is where Randy Gaylord told us our language should be, which is why it's in this section. And he added climate and environmental commissioner in section 1, and then he added in section 2, the climate and environment commissioner shall have the powers, duties, and obligations which are expressly vested in such office or by this charter in Article 3, section 3.10, paren 3 and by general law. And then the rest of it is kind of what is standard in the charter. And then everything in section 3 is new language. And this is this new language really relates to kind of what we've been going over for the past, I'd say, I don't know, 3 weeks. Seems like we've been in the law for about 3 weeks. So Bob, you had a couple issues.
Yeah, most of this is just minor. Sometimes it's a semicolon, you know, that kind of stuff. Okay.
Okay.
So, and there's just a few, and I can go through them pretty quickly, I think.
Okay.
And the first is a maybe yes, maybe no, depending on what you want. On the second line in paragraph 3, as of May 2020, you know, taking over those powers as of May 2020. And I just suggested as of May 31st, 2021.
21, okay.
Just putting in the 31st.
Okay.
Then down, and by the way, I hope I won't have trouble reading my own notes, but sometimes I do. Then down about, I don't know, 10 lines, something like that. The line starts on the left with environment, environment, comma, cultural resources. And then there's a mistake there. There's a colon, and you meant for it to be a semicolon. Okay.
Okay.
Then you go down 2 more lines, sustainable purchasing, comma, greenhouse gases, comma, marine resources. And then I think the next thing is a different and goals of blah, blah. So I think there you probably need a semicolon.
Okay.
Then, by the way, if anybody thinks that these things are wrong.
Well, the goals of the San Juan County resolution relate a lot to greenhouse gases and things like that.
Well, that's why they should be separate from marine resources.
Okay.
It sounds like it's the same thing. Okay, if you don't put a semicolon in there.
Okay.
And then when you get down to the commissioner shall have authority, which is a couple. I've got and here this is a judgment call. I was wondering if we wanted to put sole authority. Is that what's intended, or do other people have the authority to enforce these provisions within
of the UDC?
Yeah. Are other people going to have the authority to enforce that, or just our commission? If it's just our commission, it should be, we might think about putting sole authority in there. Although I don't know what Randy would say, but so that's a judgment for the group, I guess.
Okay.
I have a comment there.
Okay.
In SEPA, they have what is called the designated official.
Right.
And
is that us?
we're not creating any conflict with that person, are we?
No, and that's in the next that's in the next paragraph down, Tom.
Okay.
And so let's hold that thought and let's get to that when we come to that next one. And then hi Liz, welcome. So Dick?
Yeah.
Is would members of the Department of Community Development also be involved in this?
In which specifically?
with the enforced provisions of the UDC chapters 1850, like the shoreline master, critical area, geological hazard.
The question is, shall we add sole and make
You know, if
the
it should be
commissioner the
just-
sole authority?
Just
Right.
the commissioner.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what we want. Is that what we want? Is that the intention, that this person would have the sole authority?
I have an example.
Okay,
I get a building permit. I start my construction. So far, I haven't had any environmental issues. But my contractor screws up along the shoreline. So I have a permit from Community Development and Planning, but there's obviously some environmental infractions going on. Who does the busting and who does the, who does the inspection and everything?
Under this provision, I would say it's the Climate and Environment Office. And
In
I think that is the intention.
yeah, I think that's the intention too, Tom. Go
In
ahead,
my
Bob.
experience, if you have two people who have authority to do something, it does not get done.
Ah,
If you have one person with the authority, that person also has the responsibility. Two people, they don't have the responsibility, someone else does. So, that's just an observation. That's why I thought to add sole, but that's up to the
Okay.
group.
Okay,
Well, we carved out these specific sections from the code because my recollection of the discussion is that was the intention. So I think adding sole authority is consistent with what we've discussed.
okay. So be it.
Anne Marie, which section
Yeah.
are you all looking at?
We're looking at Article 3, Section 3.10, Section 3,
Okay.
and we are wrapping up paragraph 4.
Okay.
Okay. The commissioner
Can
shall
I
have
continue with
authority. Yes.
Can I continue with my example?
Oh, for sure.
And so
Yeah.
my contractor screwed up. He
Mhm.
dug a big ditch in the shoreline that shouldn't have been done.
Okay.
And obviously the contractor knows that his subcontractor did this. Then what happens? Does he call the C&E department and say, hey, you better get out here, there's a problem? What happens there?
So you're asking a question about how the communication would flow?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Are you
if I were
thinking
a
that?
contractor, I just, as good as I am, I would sure like to have this not be an issue, not be a big problem.
So if you put sole in there,
So it's
it wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Because
I-
you'd
I-
know
I
who to
guess-
go to.
Well, and I think having been a contractor for 10 years, Tom, I find it a bit amusing. The contractor is probably going to make him fill that ditch and straighten things out, and nobody's going to get called. But
Yeah,
if he does call somebody, at least for a while, it's likely to be the CDC. And then what would happen is the CDC would have to refer it to the climate office.
it's a little hazy there. Yeah.
Not so hazy if you put the word sole in.
Okay.
Okay, then on to the next thing would be on the next page.
Uh-huh.
Let's see if I can understand what my notes are. On the second paragraph that begins, the commissioner may adopt rules.
Uh-huh.
Let's see, with authority delegated to the officer. I don't know what that meant, that word meant in that sentence. With the authority delegated to the officer of the county legislative authority. What does that mean?
The commissioner may adopt rules and orders as authorized by the applicable ordinances. Where are you? The county? Where are you,
Yeah,
Tom?
yeah.
Or Bob?
Yeah, you keep going in that. As authorized by applicable ordinances and state statutes, provided that each rule and order is not in conflict with the authority delegated to the officer.
That should actually be the commissioner.
Okay.
That
the commissioner, then it says, or to the county legislative authority or the authority of, okay, so there, whichever one of those authorities applies.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
and that came from Randy, and I think the reason officer is in there is because Randy is, pushing to have the title changed, but if we're going with commissioner, then
Yeah.
that needs to change to commissioner.
Yeah,
Good,
and
okay.
we'll talk about that a little bit later. Bob, before you go on,
Yes, ma'am.
Tom, do you want to talk about that paragraph above where we have the SEPA responsible official?
Well, let's see if I can find it.
It's the commissioner will review and comment on private and public proposals for land use permits in a timely manner. This shall include providing comments on environmental checklists prior
of
to
the
the SEPA significance determination by the
Where are
county.
you? Where are you, Anne Marie?
It's the paragraph just above the one that Bob just spoke about, where he had commissioner or officer versus commissioner.
Top of the second page,
Top of the second page.
Okay.
first sentence, second sentence.
So Tom, you had a question about the county's SEPA responsible official.
No, I think I understand it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's where that was kind of, we've got I just wanted to show you that we do have that separated out, so it should be
Mhm.
pretty clear. Yes, Sharon and Liz.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but did we do any adoption of minutes and are we going to? I just wasn't sure about that. We skipped it on the agenda.
Well, the minutes are really the recordings. I mean, we can go back and adopt minutes if you want.
I just
Yeah.
don't know if we want to do that, if it was just an oversight. think I took
Let's finish
minutes.
what,
Okay.
let's finish what we're doing.
We're doing, and then
decide.
we can go
Okay.
back and do that. Yeah.
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 Liz, did you have a question?
I did back in section, paragraph 3, I guess, number 3, down near, it says.
Okay, so why don't you hold that and
Okay.
let's go, because Bob was running through some comments, and the only reason I went back to Tom was because Tom raised this issue, and I wanted to make sure he saw where that was. Okay, Bob, so let's continue with your comments, and then we'll
Yes.
go back to Liz.
Yes, ma'am. I have at the end of, well, the paragraph that begins, the county council should review.
Uh-huh.
At the end of that sentence, there's a phrase, and I just wrote next to it, what is this about? Because I didn't understand it. Everybody else will, I'm sure, but, and make recommendations to the county prosecutor regarding filing enforcement actions. Well, this morning it makes sense to me, so never mind.
Okay.
Seems like you would make recommendations to the prosecutor about, well, it says regarding I guess that's it. That's what I was questioning. Regarding filing enforcement actions, the county prosecutor would file those actions. Would he file them in court? Or are they administrative actions?
So the commissioner is going to be making recommendations to the prosecutor about enforcement actions, is the way, once the county council amends these ordinances.
Okay.
And then and then the next part of it explains this period of time between when the county council makes their changes or amends those ordinances, and when the commissioner and his staff are working issues, they're going to be working more in concert with CDC and the prosecutor.
I guess it's that phrase to me seemed like an orphan in this sentence, because the sentence says the county council should review and amend ordinances by December 31st to incorporate changes required to, and by the way, they get more than a year, right? It's December 31st, 2022. That was intentional.
Right, because yes, we did put that in there as that time frame
how long it
intentionally
takes.
because of the
Yeah.
election and the amount of time it might take.
Yes,
And
ma'am, I get it, but okay.
Sure.
So it goes
Go
on
ahead.
to, it says should review and amend ordinances by that date to incorporate changes required to vest the commissioner with appropriate administrative code enforcement authority and responsibilities under UDC chapter such and such, and make recommendations.
So that may be, let me just make
What's
sure
that?
that,
Is that changes required to allow them to make recommendations? It
no,
seems like an
it
orphan in a
may,
sentence.
it may be that it was moved from below. And see here we
didn't
have with the
understand the intent.
referral to county. Well, let me go back and see if that's a mistake. I think I understand your point, because it
Okay.
seems like it would end right there.
but-
So it could be something that came from Randy. So let me see where that came from.
Okay, then down in the paragraph that starts, the San Juan County Council shall appoint.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, and then the next, I guess it's the third sentence in there. Five shall be residents of the county who are engaged in green jobs as defined by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, comma, are members of that such and such organizations and include. So did we mean to say or are members, or do they have to both be in green jobs and be members of local organizations?
As I understand or remember our discussion, there were certain categories that we wanted at least 5 of the members to come from. We wanted,
ma'am.
we wanted a representation from green jobs. We wanted local environmental organizations. We wanted local youth. And we wanted one builder.
And one Salish.
And one person from the indigenous community.
In
Yeah.
that case,
so that's the 5.
In that case, you do need an or, because
I just-
you're not stating that the person needs to both be in a green job and also that same person needs to be in a local environmental organization. You want them to be one or the other, right? If so, you need to put or, because if you just put a comma in there, it means that person has to be both of those things. Five residents who are engaged in this engaged in this. A comma means and are members of the local enforcement agency and include a local. When you put include there, you take that phrase and you put it aside. That's okay. So the only problem you have is you're stating that the person needs to be engaged in green jobs and the local environmental organization. I would put the word labor statistics, comma, or are members of local environmental, because that's the intent, right?
I think the intent was to get a mix of those two things, but
Sure.
I see your point.
Yeah, you're not going to require that the person be both things.
No,
That unless he's both things, he's not eligible. He or she is not eligible. That's how it reads now. Unless you said at the beginning, at least one of these categories, and you listed the categories.
Right. We wanted representation from these 5 categories.
So individuals individuals who are appointed must fill at least one is the idea. But you can make that simpler just by putting the word or. But if it's kind of befuddling, then we can, I don't know.
no, I think your point's well taken.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
The way it reads now, you'd have, after you had the green jobs, you'd have 2 positions left in a 7-member advisory. So I hear Bob's point.
All right. By the way, I think this whole thing is awesome. Awesome. You've done a great job with it. But
Well, it's been a team effort. So
yes.
I appreciate it, but it's really the team that's done this.
Yeah, I really meant everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
Including Randy. Randy's helped out, I guess.
Yes, Liz.
Before you go forward, in that very line there, what was the decision on that they needed to be at least 16 years of age? You think about Greta, who was 14 when she began. Some of the members who've written into our commission have been younger than that. So
We
is there a
discussed that.
reason to have it be 16?
Yeah, go for it, Bob. I kind of forgot why we did the age thing, but maybe you can remind me.
No, I don't have a response to that. I think that
I do.
Liz's
I'm sorry,
comment
Dick
is,
does.
yeah.
I do.
I'm
We
sorry.
did discuss that. Somebody had proposed 18, we went
Oh.
back and forth, and we landed on 16. So I would say, let's not revisit that.
And I'm inclined to say that it's an arbitrary number, and different youth, having watched the representation of the youth against the US, some of those kids are 11. So I'm thinking, why do we need an age in there? If you have a kid who's willing and able to show up for those meetings, they will self-select in or out.
Hey,
And-
when I was 11 years old, I was just going into the Boy Scouts and I was not a fit person to be on a committee of this importance at the time.
Yeah,
And I'm
they're-
not a big
And,
hairy Dumbo.
and
you know.
Okay, Dick, go ahead.
my response to that is, how many times are we going to revisit things? We discussed it, we landed on 16. I get really tired of just revisiting things.
So Dick, I missed one meeting. Okay, so I'm just coming up to date on one meeting, and I think 16 is an arbitrary number, and they will self-select out. The kids are coming in wiser. They feel a sense of urgency that we didn't live with, a sense of responsibility to act earlier than we had. I think it could be a short decision and just say, why have an age in there?
Okay, go ahead, Dick.
Well,
And
I was going to say, I think 16 is a good age in terms of maturation, development. And yes, I understand there are immature 16-year-olds and very mature 14-year-olds, but I think we want to set my feeling is we want to set some minimum age, and 16 to me makes sense.
Okay, let's keep going here.
All right. The next comment that I had, let's see, the candidate down in the next paragraph, it begins with, as this is a new position. The sentence, the candidate shall have been a resident and registered to vote in Santa Monica County, Washington for 3 years prior to the candidacy. My question was, did you want to put the 3 years immediately prior to the candidacy? Otherwise, the person could have been a resident 25 years ago for 3 years and then gone off to Tahiti, for 25 years and then come back.
So the intent was that you were here for 3 years before, because part of our argument here, as I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we wanted to make sure that people knew the county and knew kind of the issues of the county. Does that sound familiar?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so
But how would the person know the issues of the county if he hadn't been there for 25 years, but was there for 3 years, 25 years ago?
yeah, I think the intent is to say that prior to becoming a candidate, you needed to be here for 3 years. Dick?
Well, I think this was in my elected versus appointed committee. It came up. It was the same issue. It sounds like it didn't come up here. And we did propose or use the language for the 3 years immediately prior, for the very reason that Bob is citing. And I think it's a legitimate concern.
And that committee felt like that was appropriate. It sounds like. Yeah.
For the very reason that Bob just outlined.
So it'd be for 3 years immediately prior to the candidacy.
For the 3 years immediately, just stick in the word immediately ahead of prior, immediately prior to the candidacy.
Right.
And Randy had a question, like he had a question that had something like May or November. And I didn't know that we really needed to get into that. Do we?
May or November.
May or November for
I
what?
think he's thinking because the election would either be in May or November, or the final tally of the votes would either be in May or November.
No, it's 3 years prior to the time that the person walks in with his candidate sheet and files. Okay, that's his candidacy. That's when his candidacy begins, and that's what it says here, candidacy, I believe.
Okay.
So, next thing that I have, the sentence that begins, possess an education, or I guess that's a phrase, possess an education relevant to climate and environment. And I'm surprised that he let us just say that and didn't
Well,
say,
he
hey,
hasn't, he's gonna probably tell us that it's gonna be difficult to uphold any of these.
it's not specific is what he's going to say. But anyway, that I didn't write that down because I think personally, I think it's okay. But and being a minimum of 3 years of applicable experience in management, administration, advocacy, and protection. So that person has to have a minimum of 3 years applicable experience in all 4 of those things, or in just one of them. If you mean just one, you have to use the word or, not the word and.
I
Which-
think it's the intent when we discussed it was and.
All 4. Okay, well, then we're
Well,
good.
because the idea, also you're gonna have a group of people that you're gonna be managing.
Yes.
Mhm.
And you need to be able to crosswalk with these other departments.
Oh, I
And-
get it.
Yeah,
I get
okay.
it. But the person also needs to have been an advocate, and it needs to have worked in protection of the climate,
Yeah.
and environment. Okay, got
You
it.
gotta know how to,
Got it,
you
no
gotta know
problem.
how to do the job.
Then at the end, I just have a couple of questions, real brief thing, and I'm sure it's easily answered. Are salary and benefits provided elsewhere? Provided for elsewhere? And also, what about staff? Is that provided? Is that just something the county manager comes up with, or?
So, salary and benefits, I believe I don't know if those are outlined in the charter or not. I'd have to go back and look. It seems to me that that would be a policy thing that would be in the personnel records or something like that, but our personnel
Is there a
department. Yeah.
commission that does that for elected officials?
Yes,
Oh,
there is. a
Okay,
commission.
okay, then I got that. And I answered my own question. What about staff? You don't put staff in here because this is a paragraph about the particular officer.
Right, and
Oh.
what Randy said was we don't create the office,
Yeah,
we create the position, like the prosecutor has his position and he can't do his job if he doesn't have X number of people, and
yeah.
assessor
Within
is the same
we can
way.
say, if we say nothing about it, within a week of the person taking office, they'll have stationery that says the office of the Commissioner of Climate and Environment. There'll be, it'll say that on there. But anyway, that's fine. That's fine.
Well, the other thing is by specifying as we did that all of the responsibilities that the commissioner will be responsible for all of the activities of the Environmental Resources Division. It's kind of a no-brainer. The Environmental Resources Division is going to be under the control of the commissioner.
The only
Thank you,
other
Kevin. Kevin has joined us now. Thank you for joining us, Kevin. Go ahead.
The only
Bob.
other comment I have about this is I hope that once we have approved it like this, it will get onto our website as soon as possible, because we have people who are saying, come on now, be specific. And when we go on the website, we can't find blah, blah. This is like a super duper important document, I think. So as soon as we can, unless there's some roadblocks, in my opinion, we need to get that out there. So other than that, great
yeah.
job.
Yes, Kevin. You're muted.
Sorry for being late, everybody. I had another board meeting I had to be at.
Sure.
Process-wise, Anne-Marie sends this to Megan. Megan goes through it, and then we send it over to Randy, and then we send it out.
So it's
Okay.
already been through Megan.
Oh, awesome.
Yes. So I just have a couple little changes to make. And then it would be ready. But what I was wondering is, can this be posted as a draft on the website?
I think it would be smart to send it to Randy right now, and we
Uh-huh.
could post it too, but I think getting it to Randy and seeing if there's any last issues we need to address. I think the only thing we didn't address that he brought up was the name.
And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. I'm not sure if Liz had other questions. She had an issue further up in paragraph 3.
Okay.
So Liz, did we cover your issue or no?
No, my question wasn't, it may be in this whole naming thing. In item number 3, midway in the paragraph, you're talking about the commission's duties shall also include the following function: the creation, an annual update of the San Juan County Climate Action Plan. I
Right.
just wondered if it shouldn't be the Climate and Environment Action Plan.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Well,
Well, wait a minute.
Not a term of
That's-
art, though.
Yes, a climate action plan is
yeah,
what the counties do, and that's a separate analysis of where the county is so that we can look at where we are and where we need to be going and set goals with the community. And then annually, remember early on, we talked about annually reporting to everybody on how we're doing.
And who is it in the county who currently does that environment review?
Right now, nobody's really doing it. At a meeting a couple weeks ago, the county manager said that he had Kendra create a score sheet and that she was beginning to talk to the different departments. And then he was gonna, it sounded like he has somebody named Denise that is gonna kind of walk them through stuff as they go in their department meetings. So right
the way-
now, they're just starting to do it primarily, I think, because we've been talking about it, but
Yeah.
that's fine.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
and the way we've structured it, then Kendra or that person would be under the commissioner anyway. So it would be the Office of Climate and Environment who would in the future going forward be writing that report.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. You
That's
just.
right. And the
you're-
advisory committee would be very heavily involved, as would other committee groups. Yes,
And
Bob?
you say we can't include the name because it's already an assigned task inside a given department.
I'm saying we shouldn't change the name because it is a term of art that is used throughout the country in terms of how we analyze the climate situation in any given area.
Okay.
Yes, Bob?
But I think Liz's comment in this situation is possibly a salient one, if I'm understanding why she brought it up in the first place. And that is, there will be people who will look at this climate action plan and will go, hey, what about the environment? I mean, I've heard those voices.
Right.
So would it be a good idea for us to add a phrase right after the climate plan that creates a new thing called the environment plan? And she'll also issue an update annually, the county environment plan.
Well,
Is
the
that something that
environment
makes
is
sense?
being impacted by the climate. So it would seem to me that it would be incorporated in there. But Kevin, you had your hand up?
so climate action plans, it's not just a term of art. It's an actual process, and it's evaluating where a government or an entity is or a corporation is with regard to the addressing climate change and how they're looking at course corrections and so on. That is all encompassing of, and this is, and Liz, you're raising a good point, and it's underscoring the fact that we need to continually be talking about the environment, because in the end, it's clean water, clean air, natural resources that people think about most. That is all encompassed by climate. So I don't think we should change the name Climate Action Plan. I also don't think we get too wordy and then add an environment action plan after that. That's not defined. We're going to immediately have a question from Randy then saying, what's that? I just put in the chat a link to local government climate action plans description of what that is. So I just think we leave it as is and it's fine. And I think throughout the document, we continually talk about the environment as we're doing more of now. But for that section, I think it's fine.
Sharon and then Liz.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think this is part of the education piece that we're going to need to really get out there, because climate change encompasses absolutely everything. It's all about the water cycle. And this is a teaching moment for us.
Liz, go ahead.
So all of my concerns have to do with around losing votes and the people who are talking to me about how they don't know that they can vote for this. And these are people who are passionate about the environment because we've backed off so much and in so many ways. So when we're not, Kevin, to your point, the climate involves all these things, but it also, environment more points to our day-to-day actions, that as individuals, we do or don't take, or we do or don't protect. And so if the language isn't there, I'm with Sharon, we need to quickly let people know in our bullet point fashion the power of this position, or we're not going to have the voters out there lobbying for this.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And I was going to, at the end of the meeting, ask if there were any of you that would be interested in working with me on like some fact sheets for, the public.
And Anne Marie, if I could finish my earlier
Oh, I'm
thought.
sorry. I'm
That
sorry.
was up to and including the age issue. So I know it's frustrating to go back at all, Dick. I totally understand that. And I also don't want to be punitive for missing one meeting. So that age issue, is coming from the public, that's we need to get youth involved in putting that in there. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Any other thoughts, concerns?
And yes, I would be interested in working with you on the fact sheet and
Okay.
the marketing of this.
I would as well.
Dick, go ahead.
Are you thoughts and concerns on this specific topic or anything in here?
Right, let's finish this one. Are we done with this now, guys and girls? All good? Yes? Okay,
Well, let me just state for the final time that I
Uh-huh.
believe that there should be a responsibility for this individual. If you're not going to call it an environment plan, maybe an annual report on progress regarding what's required to keep our environment up. An annual report to the public, where this is what the government did, and this is what you all did out there privately, and this is where our environment seems to be now as opposed to where it was a year ago. Something like that. If you just put it in there, it will make people feel good. Something like that.
Dick?
I hate to disagree with Bob because he has a good idea binder too. But I think we need to keep this as simple as possible. The commissioner can make a decision about whether that's necessary or a good idea. Let the person do it. The other thing I wanted to raise, and I said, disagree with Bob, when he went through the punctuation and grammatical changes, it slid by me, but it was sticking in the back of my brain. If you go up to the paragraph that talks about, it's the one right above the commissioner shall not be responsible for
Right.
building codes, fire codes. Okay, right up above that, I think, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, where it says that what the commissioner will be responsible for is reviewing and submitting comments on that whole list of things, marine resources and the goals of San Juan County Resolution 2020. And I think, Bob, you wanted to put a semicolon after marine resources. That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I'm sorry. It should be a comma, shouldn't it?
Well, you can put a comma, yeah. That's the whole comma redundancy debate. But if you want to put a comma there, I'm fine with it.
Anytime you're right. I was looking somewhere else, and it should be a
No,
comma.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
Liz?
Just a general comment in terms of the fact sheet, the marketing piece, whatever we call that I think that the public is going to read this. The commissioner shall not be responsible for building codes, fire codes, subdivision, recreation, public access, tourism, or other county functions unrelated to climate or environmental protection. And I think they're going to read that and be appalled and thinking, because all of those directly are related to climate, environmental health, and integrity.
Okay,
So-
and right below that, it says, the commissioner shall have sole authority to enforce provisions of the shoreline master plan, critical areas, geological hazard areas, wetlands, habitat, mining, forest conversion, storm drainage, clearing, archaeological resources. So, I mean, to me, there's a route into any issue if there's a problem. Like Tom gave the example of, okay, he's doing a project and the contractor comes in and gets into some area on the shoreline. Well, that's going to, normally our person would not be in there, but that would trigger whoever got the call to get it over to the Environment and Climate, or the Climate and Environment Commissioner's office.
And so my question may have to do with, again, the marketing and the reading of putting what they have the power to do first, and then what they don't. And if that's what occurs in the fact sheet,
Right.
I just want to see people get, a closed mind to hearing what the commission can't do before they see, oh, here's the way we're protecting those very things that you're concerned about.
And let's talk about outreach and education.
Okay.
That's what the fact sheets are really about. Okay, Dick, and then Kevin.
Well, I'm going to agree with Liz on that one, because building codes clearly are related to climate or environment. Subdivisions are. And in terms of marketing, I think I would put a period after tourism and scratch the rest of it. I mean, say the commissioner's not going to be responsible for those things, but don't say it's because they're unrelated to climate or
Oh, I
environment.
see what you're
because
saying,
that's simply
yeah.
not true.
Okay.
Well, unless you put a comma after functions, unrelated only applies to other county functions. Other county functions unrelated. So you got all of those
That's
things, and
true.
then other county functions unrelated. If you put a comma in there, then functions unrelated refers to every one of those things. You're saying that's not related to environment, that's not.
I just,
Wait a
That's
second.
too
Kevin
subtle.
is next. Hold on.
Okay.
Dick, finish your sentence.
No, I just said that's too subtle, in my opinion.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, Kevin.
Okay, I was going to say what Liz said first. I have a couple points here. One is I think we should put what the person's doing first, and then have it what they're not doing second. So reverse those bullet points. The second thing is,
What would you, I'm sorry, where are you moving this paragraph then?
I don't have it in front of me right now, but I believe
I do. So it's the commissioner shall not, it starts there, take that commissioner shall not through, down that whole thing and just drop it below the commissioner shall.
Exactly. And then the other thing, Dick, to your point and Bob's point, we want to just say that they shall not, and the biggest thing there is be responsible for building codes. We had a long, thoughtful conversation early on that,
Right.
We do not want to get into community development and planning portion of buildings and enforcement and coming in and checking if the plumbing is correct. I mean, that is all a very important work that the county does, and it is not the environmental side. Are there ramifications? Of course. Just like community health is still going to be responsible for septic system inspections and such. And that, when they fail, has a big environmental impact, but that's not this person's job. And what we state very clearly is in that now first paragraph, what the person's job is, which is shorelines, critical areas, wetlands, mining, those different things. And it's important to list those the way we do with the codes so that it's very clear under statute what we're giving them the authority for. And then not that second piece. But if we need to clarify that second sentence so that we're not saying that those aren't environmental, it's just we're saying this person doesn't have responsibility for that, period. They may have an environmental impact. That's not our judgment. Our judgment is they're not doing that piece.
Right. And that's why I said put a period after tourism and strike the rest.
Dick's right there because of what it says to people.
Could you just read it then with that, please? I'm
The
sorry.
commissioner shall not be responsible for building codes, fire codes, subdivisions, recreation, public access, or tourism.
Perfect.
And we would be
Period.
dropping or other county functions unrelated to climate or environmental protection, because it
perfect.
implies that these are not related.
Right.
Sharon and Liz.
But if we just take out that language, are people going to just assume that we don't think those are related? Or would it be better to
State
keep
it.
the language in but change it and say something like, these are not related to the specific structure of the environmental resources department, or we need to communicate to them some way that these things are going to be handled. And I don't think we're doing that.
Kevin and then Liz.
They're already being handled by the county. So we can't, what we have to do is in our fact sheet, tell the story. We also need to, we should pass a rule right now that we're not allowed to add any language period to anything. because everything we're submitting is too long. And so
Yeah.
I think we need to be really strict on that. I love Dick's idea of just period. We just say they shall not, and here they are. And then in our fact sheet, we can have a little paragraph saying, this is what they're going to do and why it's so important. And these other functions, they're obviously handled by other entities already or not, but it's not going to be this person's responsibility.
Liz?
So I'm happy to hear we're going to move the period in that sentence. I think that's really helpful. And I think this sentence alone is going to be problematic for us. So I don't know, Bob, with your capacity for wordsmithing, if there's a way to let people know it's not that we're ignoring or detaching the Office of Climate and Environment from those issues, but there's other departments that are managing those. So I don't know how many people are going to read our fact sheet, how many people are going to read the actual amendments. People who read this and see that they're not, those are hot button items for environmental issues.
Okay,
So-
Dick, and are you finished, Liz? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yes, thank you.
You take a breath and then I jump in and say,
Right, right.
okay, Dick, and then
Okay.
Bob.
Don't breathe.
I do think, we can't control who's going to read what. The place for what you're talking about, Liz, is in the fact sheet. And I'm 100% with Kevin. We don't want to be adding any words, any more clarification. Our goal should be to keep these things, the amendments or the ballot issues, as brief as possible.
Do we have to have that not in there?
Well, I will remind you that in the town hall meeting, one person raised a question and said that they were upset about the fact that we weren't going to be in there. And then right after that, the next person said, oh, that really made me feel better. So it's just, what works for one won't work for another. And we've got to really talk about what we want this person to do. Yes, Sharon.
Yeah, I remember that, but I don't think that is a reason for us to not be very, very clear about what is capable of happening. And I don't think we're being clear. And I think if we leave to the fact, we run the risk of people not looking at it.
Okay, Bob.
Okay, suggestion, and this might get booed roundly, I don't know, but you've got the commissioner shall not be responsible for this item, that item, and all the way to the end. Then you could add a sentence that says the commissioner shall be available for consultation by the county officials responsible for these actions, be responsible for these areas. Consultation, that available. That means the people who are doing it have to call the commission and say, hey, what do you think about this? Maybe that will never happen, but if it helps to get this thing passed by putting a link to those things that is ephemeral and, he's available, he or she is available for consultation.
So how
What
did you
about
have
that?
the sentence go again?
Here's what I wrote. The commissioner shall be available for consultation with the county officials responsible for these areas. Or you could say for these functions.
What I like about it is that it immediately connects. There's not
That's what I'm
a
talking
hard line disconnect from these critical issues and this office.
That's why
Yeah.
I'm suggesting it. It's not anything that anyone has to do. And the ball is in the court of the officials that are doing it. They can completely ignore it if they want to, but it will tell our folks who are wanting something like that in there that there is that linkage.
The intent is for it to be a relational position.
Does anybody have any concerns about adding that language?
I'd like to hear it one more time.
The commissioner shall be available for consultation with county officials responsible for these functions.
Good.
Very simple. I say yes. I move that we add it if we need. there needs to be
Second.
a motion.
So we got a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. Kevin, Kevin
Aye.
is staying out.
I'm not supporting any new language anywhere.
Okay, so
Ah,
Kevin and Dick are out, and I've got,
can you just say under 10 words or something like that?
Yeah, I am, guys, I think we're getting caught up in minutia.
No,
Uh,
no.
What we need to do is finish the document and get it out there and start telling people what it is and what it isn't. That's what's going to sell this is the communication we need to have.
This would finish it.
This adds the clarity that I think we need to what it is and what it isn't.
Okay.
so
He's still
it
not
was a
voting, not still not
it
voting
was a
for it.
4-2 vote.
And you get away from the not
Okay,
language.
it was a 4-2 vote.
Oh.
I say the language is going in.
Okay. All right.
Tom?
Next thing.
Well, you never asked for the abstentions, so that's what
Oh,
I
I
did.
just, I'm
abstained.
Oh.
sorry, I counted you as a no, but if you'd like to abstain, that's fine. Okay, so Tom is an abstention.
And
Okay,
I was actually being an abstention. I was not a no.
okay, so we have
I'm-
2 abstentions
Or
and
zip.
four,
It
Yeah.
still passes.
yes. Okay,
I do think it's good additive language. I just need to like push us all to just.
okay.
Sure.
No, now we're
Absolutely.
about ready to close the conversation on this document. Okay? Because we have another document to talk about.
Can you give me, I'm sorry, can you give me that sentence, Bob, one more time? I want to actually write it down.
Well,
The
Anne Marie's got
commissioners
it.
shall be available for consultation with county officials responsible for these functions.
Commissioners shall be available for consultation with county officials responsible
For these
For-
functions.
these functions. Okay, thanks.
Okay,
It's probably the county officials responsible for
The
this.
count.
And then the period still ends at the end of tourism, correct?
yes.
Okay.
And they're, so, okay. Okay, all good. And I'll make those other changes and get this. Kevin, I was gonna make the changes and send it to Megan, I guess, again, right? Because is that the flow? Or I was confused because I thought it sounded like they were supposed to go from you to Randy.
They are. And so if you've already sent it to Megan, we don't need to send it to Megan again. We can say
Okay.
it's done and I'll send it to Randy.
Okey doke,
Just send me whatever the final is.
okay.
and
You
I'll
know,
send
there is
it
a
to You.
there is a
Okay.
place in the first paragraph isn't lined up properly. Everybody, you can see that by
Right.
glancing.
And I'm not really very good at that. And I'm sorry about that. That's just like not in my zone anymore.
Somebody will fix it.
So, okay, the next thing we need to talk about is the title of the position. And we don't want to spend all of our remaining time on that because I would like to also have us talk about the fact sheet, which has the title, the issue, and the amendment on it.
Uh,
Let's see, titles that have been floated. There is the commissioner, there is the secretary, there is the administrator, there is the director, there is the officer, there is the superintendent. Yes, Bob.
Although I am in favor of keeping it for the commissioner, we already voted for that. It should be
Right.
put to bed. Although I'm in favor of that. The word that I used when I first wrote the thing up, 4 months ago, was advocate. That's another word, advocate for the environment, advocate for the climate. It's not as strong as commissioner. Commissioner has got the strength and people will love it, I think. But
Okay, and I'm bringing this up because the prosecuting attorney asked us to talk about this, or not to talk about it, but he made some suggestions on some of that wording. So, anybody else want to weigh in on this? Are we fine with what we've got?
Anne Marie, is it my understanding? Is my understanding correct that the objection to it is the fact that at some time in the past, our council persons were called commissioners?
Yes.
Correct.
I mean, that is a bizarre reason not to have it be.
The
the
suggestion, if you read Randy's memo, he says there will be confusion. I think that's a legitimate argument in the fact that there will be confusion, period, because it's a brand new position. Just like how both Randy and I, in meetings with the CRC, have referred to the current county council as the county commission, because we're used to that structure, as is Tom. And so, you know, Tom and I were both commissioners, and then it became a council, right? So there will be confusion because we're creating something new, period. I don't know if we need
That's
to get
true.
caught up in this too much. My thing is that Randy has raised some really legitimate, important points for us to consider legally as far as how we describe things. And I think we've addressed those. And then he raised some that were more his opinion, his personal, not his legal opinion, but his personal opinion. And I think this is the latter. This is not a legal issue. This is a personal suggestion from our prosecutor. And so we need to take it as such. That said, I'm kind of tired of every time we raise an idea, there's some pushback that is perceived as legitimate. And so I don't know where to go on this, but I'm open to having a new name, even though commissioner, if you look at it, is the name that is used in local governments for positions such as this. It's also the name that is used in state governments for positions such as Liz, as Anne Marie has pointed out numerous times, that were, you know, that her original concept was kind of bouncing this off of the Commissioner of Public Lands. I think advocate is great. I told a client recently, they asked me what was my title. I said, I want to be the change guy.
The change guy.
There's like, you know, you can come up with cool new names, and after a while, they're the norm. So we just need to select something and say, this is what we're doing. The last thing I would say on this is, while I'm totally open for new names, we've been saying commissioner for 6 months, and, and the opposition is calling it czar because it sounds more powerful or whatever than it is. It's not a czar, but I do think commissioner, we've been using it, so maybe just for consistency we stay there. But I'm sorry to counterpoint myself on this so much, but I hope I'm making sense.
Sharon and Liz and Dick, comments? Sharon, no.
No
Liz,
comment.
comments? No. Dick? Bob?
Yeah.
Dick and then Bob.
Wait,
Yeah.
Dick.
Wait your turn, Bob.
I just wondered whether the public is confusing us with members of the city of the county council, because I'm looking. There's 7 commissioners on the screen here, right? Nobody thinks we're part of the county council, so I think it's okay to use that word for somebody who we, the public, is commissioning to do this particular job.
Okay, let's go to Dick.
I have said repeatedly that I thought commissioner was the best idea, but when Kevin just said advocate, I mean, if somebody put that in an email before or said it, it slid by me.
Oh, no.
I kind of like advocate because of what it conveys. I mean, if we're talking about messaging, that's a good word. I like it. And I think,
Bob said this early on. This was like a January or February point.
well, that's the problem. See, I tend
Yeah.
to disregard what Bob says, you know. I just think,
As does everyone.
Yes, Sharon.
no, I like it.
Sharon.
I like advocate. You know, like we said, we need a voice for those of us who really want our natural environment to have a voice. You know, and we're talking about it, creating a public advocate position, which I like much better than the ombuds person. But at the same time, commissioner does feel a little more authoritative.
Yeah. Liz.
I'm with Bob 100% on this, that the commissioner has a
More
declarative-
gravitas.
Yeah, gravitas. There we go. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so yes, Dick.
I take back what I said because I forgot about public advocate,
Yeah.
and that is a potential source of confusion then. So I take it back. I'm back with commissioner.
Okay, so we can close this conversation. Is my reading on that correct?
Do we need to vote on the name or just move forward?
No, I think we've already voted on the name. Am I wrong
Yeah.
about that? I thought we did.
We
No,
did.
Yeah, we did a
We
while
just need
ago.
to leave it.
Okay, so I just wanted to, in fairness, I just wanted to make sure that we aired that. Okay, so if we look at the fact sheet, I'm not exactly sure how this is to be used, but I thought maybe this was the opening piece that people would see. Am I wrong about that? That describes what we're doing? Or, and then the next piece is the actual language of the charter amendment.
And
Um,
Marie, which email is your fact sheet? Where
It's in
can
the
I-
same one.
With the agenda?
Yeah,
No,
no, it was with the charter review
okay,
amendment.
let me get it pulled up here, so, thank you.
Yes, Robert.
Here's what I think. At one point, I suggested short bullet points. Now, I believe many other people suggested the same thing. I think that when it got over to Megan's very organized. I think that she came up with this fact sheet process, and it did not, I don't think that captures what we were talking about. We were talking originally about not something internally for us to figure out how many things we have and all that. We were talking about a document that we could, or a piece of paper that we could put out there that would just have 5 or 6 lines with 6 or 7 words in each line, and that's
Oh,
it,
okay,
with bullet points. So, yeah,
okay.
I don't know what
So
you
this is just like something which is going to go together so the public can see all of the ideas and what they are and how they fit together.
is the idea to put out a fact book with all the fact sheets in it.
I don't think so. I think we're talking about a fact sheet in our committee because we have had several people in meetings ask us for that. And Sharon and I were in a meeting yesterday and some people asked us for it again. The first time I had a conversation with Friends of the San Juans, their leadership was like, oh, can you do some fact sheets for us? And I was like, well, that'll come a little bit later. First, we got to figure out what we're doing. Yes, Liz. And then Tom.
So my wondering has to do with the value of a combination of doing a very bulleted, real clear talking points for people to walk away with. And also having, depth of information who people want to dive down. And then also having the more eloquent language of a different narrative of what our future will result because of the work we've done. That, to me, that would be the work of anyone putting together this particular piece.
Tom?
Well, I just want to add my 2 bits about more information, because I've been asked to speak to a couple of groups, and I have in front of me the 11 one-liners almost for the proposed amendments.
Oh, okay.
And while I know a lot about them, it's really difficult to go into depth to any of them except this committee, because I've sat through most
Right.
of the meetings. So just looking at the 11 proposed amendments that were released, where does one begin in trying to explain those to people who haven't been involved here?
Okay, Dick, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually like what Megan did. I think she did get to the point, and it's concise. It tells you what you need to know. The only thing I don't like is the title, because climate doesn't appear anywhere up there. I think the title has to be something like responding to climate change to protect
Environmental impacts.
natural and cultural resources, something like that. But the rest of it, I'm pretty happy with. In issues, now is the time, beginning the second sentence.
Yeah,
kind
this
of-
is something I just wrote based on the other document that we showed when we did the slideshow the last time, that just kind of brought people up to date. So I haven't sent this to Megan yet. So
well,
yeah,
then
this is like, you guys can have at it.
I think you did a good job. I mean, I'm talking about minor changes. I think this this gets to the point, and I think the fact sheet has to be brief as well. And, it's a pretty good job, Anne Marie.
So, yes, Robert.
I just wanted to ask probably Kevin a question because it's a larger in scope. And is this not the time perhaps for us to begin to plan what, if anything, the commission is going to do to publicize it, to get our work out there well before the election, so discussion can be had if we want to do it in our words, get everything out there. And if so, we do it by putting them in the 3 newspapers, I suppose, and some kind of fact sheets for bulletin boards or whatever. But we need to have a plan, and that will help us to figure out what this fact sheet is for.
Okay, Kevin, you're on.
So a few things. First of all, we need to be careful. This is a formal county meeting right now, so we're not going to talk about the campaign side of this or the other side of that, but just purely on the educational side, which is totally appropriate.
Yes.
The reason we're doing these fact sheets, and again, there's not going to be a fact sheet for every single amendment. Sorry, Tom.
Oh.
There will be, for instance, one fact sheet that maybe covers 2 or 3 issues, and then I think the issue from this committee and the issue from the Law and Justice Committee will have their own, and maybe another. Those fact sheets are to be the bullet points that you're talking about, Bob. It's quick, it's simple. It's like, here it is. And that is the formal on county letterhead that goes out and says, here's what works. I hope all of you also saw the email I sent late last night regarding the process going forward. And I also shared the actual documents that the last Charter Review Commission submitted in their own resolution to the county councilor and the county auditor, saying, here's our final work. And so we're also moving toward that. And that's where Megan is going to help us put together that final document where it says, here's our full proposal. And then here's the specifics behind it. They had 3. We have 11 at this point. One of the things we'll be talking about tonight is if we want to try and whittle those down further. But all that said, these fact sheets are the formal educational piece for each of our issues. I also think that, as Anne Marie suggested earlier, and Anne Marie, I would volunteer to help you on this as well. We need to also do a separate kind of paragraph saying what the problem is we're addressing, why it needs to be addressed, and then why the solution we've come up with addresses it. And that's not, this fact sheet is more the basics. That piece where we state the argument and the rationale also needs to be done. And then all of this is done in a formal capacity. At some point, hopefully in the near term, we will then cease to exist in this form and move into a new form. Or if we continue working, we set up a separate organization with a very clear firewall that says, this is us working to promote these issues in a campaign related way. And this is us continuing our work, and never shall the 2 meet.
Okay. So this document that we've been asked to give Megan has a title, it has an issue, and it has the amendment. I was caught up in, because the document also said recommendation, and I was like, well, what's the difference between what's the recommendation? I didn't know, and I wasn't connecting to the fact that we have recommendations that are going forward. And I got hung up on that. So I was really pleased to see I didn't have to create yet a recommendation. But having said that, I have until Friday to give Megan something. I really should try to give it to her today.
Yeah, the actual deadline was today. We said if you really, really needed it, you could.
Right. So that's why I had hoped you guys might have a chance to look at this.
I think.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry. I think as is, we send it to Megan. Let her work on it with you. Let her look at it and then get back to you.
So shall we go ahead and make that amendment that Dick put forward, which is instead of protecting, it's responding to climate change, our environment, or climate change and climate change, our environment, natural and cultural resources, or,
I think that's fine if we want to do it, but I think getting it to Megan is the most important at this point.
okay,
But
yes.
since Dick made that suggestion, maybe we shouldn't do it.
Okay, Liz, you had your hand up, yeah. You're muted,
Apology.
go for
So
it.
to me, as it's worded, we're not going to get a resounding hallelujah from the people who are our strongest allies. And so some of it has to do with order. So my question is, if we send it off to Megan, then do we have a chance to reword, or can we send Megan at least, here are the most, the top 7 pressing issues with people that this is the top of their concern list, and then say, weave these in and let her do it. That makes sense, y'all? Sorry.
Yeah, I think she's going to tell us that this is our baby and that we need to give her the language that we want to use, and then she will massage it for us. Kevin, you had your hand up?
I'm torn. Liz, I think you make a really good point. The other thing though is we all are in a bubble. I would love to go to a meeting with Tom and be a fly on the wall, because he's talking to other people in our community, and I'd love to hear what they're saying. So 5 people who have showed up consistently at our meetings who are really passionate about this, we definitely need to listen to them. We also need to make sure we're creating materials that anybody in our community can read and not have a lightning rod, and at the same time feel really positive about it. And that's a tough line to cross. And so I would say that some of the people we're hearing from are on one side, some of the people I'm sure Tom is hearing from are on another side. And just like any political campaign Tom or I have ever been in, you can't listen to either one of those. You need to go to the middle. You got to take off the 5% on this side and 5% on this side, and it's the 90% in the middle that you really want to try and talk to. So all of that said, Liz, I do think you're making a good point. If you have suggestions specifically that you wanted to get Anne-Marie today, I think that's great. But I also think we just need to get it to Megan and let her, she's really good at this, so let her take a crack at it. And then maybe we look at it again. The other thing is Megan will then send it back to us. And if we say, wait, this doesn't cut it, then we can go back again, or we could preempt that by making some of those suggestions now.
I just want to make sure, to Dick's concern, because he loathes us going back at this point, which I understand. So I didn't want to be put in the position of like, hey, we've already sent this to Megan and now we're wanting to go back. I didn't want to be left in that position. Because I don't think the language really addresses the on the ground concerns.
Okay, so I need you to give me that language,
Okay,
and I need to get it probably today before 4.
yeah.
Okay, is that doable for you? You'll see what you can do.
Magic happens here.
Okay. Sharon, did you have something you wanted to say? Now that you have your mouth full, I'm trying to call on people when they're eating to keep us moving forward.
Actually, I do have something. I just want to say, are we voting on Dick's proposal, or is that a motion, or what are we going to do with that?
That was just kind of, he threw that out. I'm trying to get this document in some kind of shape to send it to Megan, because today's my deadline. Yes, Robert.
I just tell you, Anne-Marie, that I missed this somehow. I didn't see, if you send it out, I didn't see it, so I've not even looked at it. As soon
Okay.
as this meeting concludes, I will go hunt it up and take a look at it. And if I have any comments or any structural suggestions, I'll send them to you. Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Yes, Liz. You're muted. And then we're going to go to Dick.
What's in this document is so much of what the process committee worked with and the input from the public. So Bob, there'll be a lot to draw on from our conversations and the comments of the public along the way to get this document tight.
I've done 3 of them for the process committee, by the way,
Yeah.
and sent them in. So
Okay. Yes, Richard. You're muted, Richard.
I support sending it to Megan today.
And
Let's
these
put it
guys
down.
are going to get me their stuff today. Sharon, if you have anything too. Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add? You're muted, and I'm going to start calling you Thomas as well. I'm going to start calling everybody by their formal name. That'll be, is it Elizabeth or Liz?
Yeah, Thomas has nothing more to add,
Okay.
except perhaps the total lack in anything of expressing what the problems are. And I'll end my statement
Okay.
at that.
Let me drop a bomb and walk out of the room. Tom, by the way, I was in the courthouse yesterday and loved seeing the old picture of you on the wall from 1995. There's a 1995 elected officials and a 2005 elected officials. Unfortunately, they haven't kept it going, so they didn't do a 2015.
Yeah.
But it was nice. I was like, there's Tom.
Okay. And he wasn't on his
Got a
motorcycle.
little
Yes.
more hair, not too much.
Yes, Robert.
I haven't had a chance to look at this thing formally. I mean, at all, other than scanning it, and I've got to give it a read. But Commissioner Lafferty, I believe it was, sent out a link. It might have been Sharon, but I think it was you, Liz. Sent out a link to a 157-page
Oh, I didn't get to
report
look at that yet.
about the Salish Sea and all of the problems, the environmental problems there. I'm telling you, we can mine that. We can probably mine that sucker and get all the things that you need. As far
Is that
as
from you? Is that from University of Western Washington?
Liz, was it from?
Yes,
UW?
yes.
Yeah, they're good. I've had a couple of meetings. Well, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yes, Liz.
I put my formal name in there for you, Anne Marie.
Commissioner Lafferty. Let's see.
I'm
Um,
Dr. O'Connell, by the way.
Okay.
There you go.
Juris Doctor.
So I think why don't we, moving forward, why don't we do this, that those of us who can will get you something today in what we're sending forward to Megan, and we still have the opportunity to look at what she does with it, and that'll both move us forward and give us time to mine that document.
Okay. Is there anything under in the category of new business that we need to talk about? I do not see this group meeting again. Am I wrong about that? I mean, we may meet offline to kind of work on fact sheets and stuff like that, but this would be kind of the last formal meeting that we have, unless we are directed by the chair of the CRC to come back.
I am so happy to not meet with you guys again.
Thanks.
And we're happy to not meet with you, Kevin. So we appreciate
In all
that.
seriousness, I would ask the question of, do we feel like the document is as good as it gets, and not just as good as it gets, like we're settling for it, but this is a solid document that does what we're trying to do.
Which
And I-
document are you talking about?
Sorry, the actual, the full document, not the fact sheet. And I would even ask Tom that question and phrase it that, Tom, I recognize that you haven't been supportive of this moving forward, but as you and I have shared, I have great respect for you. And so just as a document, do you think that this functions and explains what it is we're trying to do? I think you've pointed out that what it's lacking, and I don't know if that goes in this document versus the fact sheet, but what has been lacking is, and you're saying it's the problem we're trying to solve, but do you feel the document itself outlines clearly what the duties and responsibilities of this person would be?
You're talking about the one called Article 3, other elected officials,
Yeah,
that we spent all the time on.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel it. You know, I agree with some of the changes, like if you you're really trying to sell something, you don't rush the bad news. You say the bad news till last. You know, little comments like that.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And put it in really small print.
Yeah.
Liz, you
Me
wanted to
and
say,
the others will figure out how to not like it. You don't have to tell us.
Liz?
Tom, if I understood you correctly, what you said was missing is we don't in any way address why we need any of this. Is that correct? Or is there more you can say about that?
Well, you know, we have 11 amendments, and this committee has one of them, maybe two. I don't have them in front of me. And we do a great job of expressing what the proposal is. But other than reading long tomes about the problems with the Salish Sea, you know, there's no problem expressed here. And I know you've tried repeatedly, all of you, to convince me of that. But the people that I'm dealing with say, we don't need this. There's no problem. And they say that about most of the other 10 amendments as well. You know, the justice and equity stuff. Somebody mentioned that, I think Bob said, somebody knocked down some Black Lives Matter signs. Well, come on. Is that the best you can do in indicating why we need a whole commission? You know, so that's kind of my take on it.
Sharon?
I find that very valuable. So Tom, thank you.
Sharon?
Yeah. It sounds like we're not getting specific with specific examples that have happened in the county and people's personal experience that have led us to this conclusion that these amendments are needed. So I wonder is there a way for us to include like stories and testimonials of people in some of the material that we have?
So
Kevin.
Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Well, I think Kevin was first.
Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
one of the things that Randy has helped us think through is, I think our original drafts had pages and pages of description. What actually goes in the charter is 1 or 2 paragraphs that says, we're creating this position. Here's what its responsibilities are. That's what goes in the charter. I think we could include a sentence or 2, max, that says, in order to address inherent, environmental impacts and climate action or something, we're creating this position. The fact sheet and then the separate story documents are what we have not spent a lot of time on, and we absolutely have to. And I will very quickly, I'm going to try and do this in less than a couple minutes, but some of you may remember the movie Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you talked about that before.
Okay, good. So that example holds true for me. We have spent a ton of time crafting the document and very little time promoting the document, or more importantly, educating people of why this is needed. Napoleon Dynamite, I'll remind you, they spent $250,000 making the film. They spent $10 million or something promoting it, and it grossed $65 million the first weekend at the box office. So the lesson learned is, you don't have to spend all your time. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Get a really good document that does what you need it to do, and then go out and sell it and make sure people understand why it's needed. So I'm really, frankly, over the document. I really need us to focus on the latter. And so I'm hoping that we can get there, because that's where, to your question, that's where we tell that story.
Yes, Sharon, and then Robert, and then Liz.
When and where do we tell that story?
We need to be telling it. So may I, Anne-Marie?
Yeah,
may I
go
respond?
ahead.
Okay. I had a conversation with someone who's sent us a lot of emails, who was frustrated over another issue. And at the end of the conversation, she brought up this position, and she said, this sounds really interesting to me, but I haven't understood how it's actually going to work and why it's going to work. Like, why do we need an elected versus Honolulu or Berkeley? And the point I brought up, which she said, oh my gosh, I hadn't heard it that way before. I said, they have an elected. They have a county executive or county or a city mayor who is an executive. So they have an elected. Again, and we've talked about this. If we had a county executive who was elected, who was really passionate about this issue, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. What we have is a county council who has an inability to prioritize just this because they have too many other items. So we're creating the executive. And so we need to explain that, and we haven't done it. So when do we do that? We do it now, we do it yesterday, we do it tomorrow. But all of us in individual conversations and then through these fact sheets and other things, we need to, in a united voice, come out and say, this is the rationale.
Yeah, I think, Robert, you were going to say something, and then Sharon, and then Liz.
I just wondered, and as I put it together in my head, I realized this may be too late, the wrong time to do this. But I just wondered if we want to have one additional meeting of this group and have it be primarily a meeting where we took testimony from members of the public telling us their stories about things that have happened to them or around them that they have seen with their own eyes that evince the need for this climate commissioner. For instance, we had Alexandra talking to us about a person uphill who did a bad thing, and it was, I don't remember what it was, and it had maybe had to do with not having a permit to do such and such, and two results, and I don't remember exactly what they were, kind of came downhill to affect her. And that was an example. I realized, I mean, that was an example that she could certainly make that would point to, hey, no one's taking care of this stuff, and we need someone to take care of it. I mean, isn't that basically our argument? And we're not pinning anything on anybody. There are limited resources, but isn't our argument that people, the problems are not being addressed the way they need to be addressed? And one of the problems, for instance, is permitting and making sure that people don't go off and do X without the proper permits. But anyway, as I was thinking about this idea of having a meeting where we had 2 hours and everybody had 5 minutes and they gave us, 50 people gave us their stories. The problem is that could be certainly conveyed to the public as, look, they wrote a solution and now they're wanting to find out, now they're asking what the problem is, that might
Sharon,
not turn out so well.
Okay, Sharon.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that aspect of it. If we're going to be able to argue, I think we need to have specific examples that we can point to, and those examples are there, but we need to have them together.
Well, I would say that we heard at least 2 last night, Sharon, in the conversation we were in, and I've heard a dozen of them in these conversations. But I'll go ahead and let Dick and then Kevin and then Tom speak. And then
we all know there is widespread recognition out there that the county's enforcement efforts are woefully inadequate. I hear it from friends all the time, and they say it with a lot of disgust. So we know that's out there, and so does everybody else. And we can't hold a meeting where we just tell people, we only want to hear from you if this was what you say. We've held 4 town halls. I don't think we need to do it again, and I'm not interested. I won't be there if we're going to do that. I just do not think it's a good use of our time.
Okay, who was next? Was that Kevin? Kevin, you were next, right?
Jake just touched on part of it. I'm not sure another town hall is the format. We also can't ask people who only are on one side of an issue to come and speak to us. You have a town hall, you're going to hear from everybody, and that's important. The last thing I want to say, though, is that the back and forth with us as individuals or as a couple few of us is what's most important now. So that it's not just a town hall or a public comment where people get to say something and we go, "Oh, thanks for sharing." But instead it is a conversation. And I think that's what's most important. The charter review commissions in the past have taken their next step, which is going to implement their recommendations, which is making sure they get voted upon. And in doing so, they went out and they educated, they talked to people, they went to the Lions Club, they went to the Rotary, they went to all these different groups and they said, here's what's happening. That's what we need to start doing. It's not necessarily another town hall. It's, that we need to go tell the story. And the other thing is, we need to remember that not only have we heard through formal testimony, but through dozens of conversations, that there really is a problem. To Tom's point, in our meetings, we all came to the table saying, okay, we've heard there's a problem, we're going to try and address it. And we haven't articulated that problem because we've been too busy trying to address it. Now we need to get back to explain to the other people who haven't heard that first part of the conversation why there's a problem and what it is and what we're doing is addressing it.
Okay, I think Tom's up.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to say that in my long time here, there's been a succession of bad actors, and they don't give a rip what the land use regulations say. One guy was clear cutting. His family had acres and acres of land, and he clear cut. And he was, the old adage is, I'd rather beg for forgiveness than beg for a permit. So I don't want to hear a whole bunch of more bad actor stories, because they're happening every day. Some people just don't care. So if you're going to have a hearing and try to get the neighbor of Alexandra to sell it in person, I don't want to hear it.
Okay,
Sounds pretty universal. Yeah.
Sharon and then Liz.
I was just advocating for Liz to speak.
Okay, Liz, go for it. Commissioner Lafferty.
Thank you. So back to your question about this group having another meeting. It makes no sense.
That wasn't my question. That was Bob's suggestion.
Okay, so to that conversation in general, it makes
Oh, okay,
no sense.
I got you.
Yeah, it makes no sense to me that this group disbands unless we're morphing into the education implementation, sorry, and working on that fact sheet.
Right.
If we just disband and we're not gathering again to hear what Megan's put together for us to create, how are we going to inform? This document doesn't talk about enforcement. What's the woman's name who was in charge of Friends of the San Juan for so long? She's no longer the president.
Stephanie Buffum.
Stephanie, she said to me, I don't think I can vote for this. So there's a big missing, and I get that it's in education. So I'm saying our work is not anywhere close to done, and either we do it as a group or we form a new group. But I don't trust that we're going to get there if we don't do a much better job of this end of it.
Okay, so I have 3 people that expressed an interest in working on fact sheets. That seems like that would be the next thing we would do. When I get the document back from Megan, I would be sharing that with everybody. I don't know that we need to formally gather to look at that, unless I'm missing some value in that. I don't know that we need to formally gather to look and create education outreach fact sheet kind of material. But Kevin had his hand up, and then Liz.
I was just going to say, I don't think we need to disband. I think we could say that we're not meeting next week, but let's see what happens via email and so on. And maybe we have to call a meeting. But right now we've concluded our first phase of our work. Let's let Megan work with the subcommittee chair to finalize that. Then it'll be sent back to us and we can look at it. But what we can say is we can take the meeting off our calendar for now. And then if we have to reschedule, we will.
Okay, Liz, does that meet your needs?
My question to Kevin is you've referenced the earlier commissions, and they formed an organization, the advocates for whatever it was, that it has to do with the how. So we create this fact sheet, we create this educational piece. how do we get that out there? What does that, who's doing that? When are they doing it? And by what mechanism are they doing that?
Well, there's two different things. One is the county will post this information. And I think what we'll do is go back to IT and have them change our page on the county's webpage. So it says, here's the final amendments, here's the final recommendations to the county council. And then when you click on an amendment, it'll have background on that. And that's the information we're providing now. Then each of us individually, however, need to start taking these out to the public and saying, let's get together. In the past, there were actually split votes on the commissions, but in the end, the commission came together and said, okay, we're going to, support this. And some people were, and Tom can speak more to this, but some people were far more engaged in that process than others. And so I imagine that will be the case this time, that some commissioners will want to proactively be out in the community speaking about these issues, and some will not. Some may want to speak in opposition to some of these issues. And that's everybody's independent voice that they get to have. But there needs to be a firewall, whether we're continuing our work or not. That entity has to be totally separate from anything we're doing now. So we could have meetings on the same day. It's just not the same meeting, and it's not including any county staff, any county emails, nothing.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Liz?
Yes.
Tom, did you want to add anything, having been there before?
Not really. No,
Okay.
I think Kevin's advice about being a campaign committee versus a charter review committee is good.
But you were one of the people that knew how kind of it dissolved and how like the group that went forward supporting it and stuff like that. So I just didn't know if you had...
I don't recall whether the charter review commission officially disbanded before the campaigning for the proposition elections. I don't. Maureen may remember, but I don't recall
It's okay.
the legal status of our commission right up to the end. I don't.
Sure. Okay. Any other comments? So at this point, I'll go ahead and see if we have any public comment. I know Ben is here. Steve was here earlier, but I think he decided to leave. Anybody want to say anything publicly? No? Oh, Ben has his hand up. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, hi. Took me a minute to find the button. Thank
worries.
you very much. Ben Bama, San Juan Island. Thank you, as always, for all your hard work and the opportunity to comment publicly. I had a couple things relating specifically to some of the conversations you had just about wording. And I wanted to say that I definitely agreed with putting in the description of the office, definitely put what the office is doing before the part about what it's not doing, because when the first time I read that, I kind of stopped reading after reading the don't part and thought, okay, what is this office doing? So I just for, marketing, that makes good sense. Also, possibly at the end of the list of things that the office does not do, where it says unrelated to climate and environment, the first time I read that, I initially took it to mean that all of those prior things were unrelated to climate and environment, which I disagreed with. I now understand what you intend with that, but maybe something like instead of saying unrelated to climate and environment, say except where related to climate and environment, or something like that. It's more words, I know, but it's a better qualifier maybe. Also, I had a strong reaction to the word advocate in a lot of ways that really sums up the spirit of what I want this to be. I want I'd really like to see an advocate for the climate and environment in our government. I think that's a needed thing. But at the same time, just the word advocate it immediately brings connotations to my mind of a position of someone who has to step in to try to provide something that the government is not providing, that it's sort of a stand-in for something that should be. And I could be totally wrong about that, but I just wanted to throw it out there that maybe think about whether advocate is really a good term for a government official. I'm not sure. You guys would know a lot better than I would. And a really good point got brought up at some point about there are always going to be a contingency people that don't care about the rules and that are going to do what they want on their property. And I've heard a lot of times from a lot of people, you know, it's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, and that does seem to happen a lot in our county with code violations and things like that. And I just wanted to say that I'm glad that got brought up, because that's one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to be involved in this, is I see that going on, and I want there to be some mechanism that gets people to take the rules more seriously to begin with, that there's not so much forgiveness when the rules are broken, and that it's more difficult because there's no or limited forgiveness. And I also feel that it might be helpful if the contractors that perform the work that doesn't meet code also have some consequences, whether it be a fine or whatever kind of merit system you want to give it. But you know, right now it seems the contractors are largely completely unaccountable, even if they're performing work that doesn't meet code. And maybe that should change, just to incentivize following code. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, I wanted to say about the Citizens Advisory Committee, or the advisory committee for this. And I admittedly was a little distracted during that part of the meeting today, and I didn't hear what all the things were. I just caught it at the end. But in general, I just wanted to say that I feel really strongly about not having the potential for lobbying on that advisory committee, that any industry or sector that would benefit by the relaxation of regulations should not be on that committee. I feel like building doesn't fall under that category. I mean, building is going to happen regardless. I don't think that relaxing building code is specifically going to benefit builders that much. They do the work within code, whatever code is, and get paid for their time. But industries relating to, say, tourism or whale watching, I think that those are industries where, the more people we can get here, the better it is for our business. The more boats we can get out on the water, the more people we can take out, the better it is for our business. I really disagree with any kind of special interest group being on an advisory committee, because I think it just sets up the potential for lobbying. And to me, that's kind of as a whole in the country, part of the reason we're at where we are now is because of special interest lobbying. And then lastly, I think that I lost my train of thought. Hang on just a second. Because I'm sure I'm over 3 minutes at this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I can't think of it. So I guess I will end it with that. Thank you. Oh, I do remember what it is
Okay.
now. It's like with the new bill with the Snake River dams that, I always thought, yes, anything to get the Snake River dams down, to restore salmon and help our whales. And now that I see that bill and what's on the other side of the scales, I actually had time when it was a question. Okay, is that trade-off worth what I want? And I'm still not sure what the answer is. And I guess I would say the same thing about this. The advisory committee for this is the same fulcrum for me, that depending on who's on that advisory committee, it would really make me ponder what I wanted to vote for and what I'd be willing to give up to get see things move in the direction I'd like to see them. Thank you for letting me go on for so long. And thank you again, as always, for all your hard work, and best of luck.
Thank you, Ben. Okay, so I don't think we have any other public comment. So we will adjourn, and we will see, unless there's anything else anybody wants to talk about. Are we good to adjourn? Yes, Liz.
Sorry about that. Almost there. Are
Yeah.
we setting the time when the implementation and education folks are meeting? I know we're going to get it. We're going to get stuff over to Megan right away, but there's more work beyond that. So do we want?
Right.
So I think it's.
How about if I just send out an email to everybody and see about their availability? Does that sound-
Absolutely. And who all is in that? It's Kevin,
Sharon
Sharon.
and myself. Yeah. And if anybody else wants to join, they're welcome.
Oh, I thought Bob had raised his hand, and I certainly have. So
I know you have. Bob, did you want to participate in this?
In what, the bullet points?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
facts.
The fact sheets, not particularly, although
Okay.
if I'm needed, I'm
Right.
okay.
I would like to ask if Kevin, if we're getting ready to go away, if Kevin has maybe 3 minutes to stay on and talk to me about something.
Okay. And so if everybody's good, we will adjourn, and I will let you know if we need to meet again. And until we meet again, have a wonderful day.
Yay.
Okay.
Marie, will you make me host and then stop recording, and then Bob and I can just chat?
Yeah, let's see now. To make you the host, I go into participants.
I think you can do it that way, or you can just click over my name. If you go over those 3 dots, I think you can.
Okay. Make host, you got it. Okay, change host. I'm going to stop the recording. Oh, you have to stop the recording now, Kevin.
I don't know how to do that. Stop.